This is important. I want to get to this, and it needs a little bit of setup here because Judge Michael Toomin is joining the show. He's a highly regarded, highly respected Cook County judge, been a judge for nearly 4 decades. He is, again, like I say, a respected guy. I can go through all the reasons, and we will in the course of this segment, but just one of the things is this is unusual because I've interviewed in my career a lot of newsmakers, political figures, leaders of all sorts, and people in political positions and people in power positions and public positions in general. But I can count on one hand the times I've actually interviewed a sitting judge in Cook County. And I think the reason for that is probably a good one. Usually they want their judgments, their decisions, to speak for themselves. And I respect that and always have. But however, usually judges are allowed to do their jobs and act independently in our system without political pressure. And so a little more background here. This is exactly what people are now saying did not happen here. A growing number of people are jumping out in front to explain that what happened to Judge Toomin is not right and we should not stand for it. He was the one who eventually got the Jussie Smollett case and whether or not to, and he decided that there were some unusual handlings of that case by the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, Kim Foxx, and he decided that why don't we have an independent investigation because there's some things here that stand out that deserve further scrutiny. I think that's what he'd say. We'll ask him, but let me just give you a little more background. Because Cook County Board President, also the Democratic Party Chair, Tony Preckwinkle, decided in a call there with the committee present not to support Judge Toomin for retention. Now that's very unusual because that's always happened before. He's never been in this position before. And important fact that Tony Preckwinkle is the political mentor of Kim Foxx seems like a conflict to me. It seems like politics to me too. Judge Toomin calls it political retribution. He came right out and said it. And now many, many fellow judges are saying, you know what, he's right. And this questions all of our independence if this guy is treated in this way. So they're taking some steps too. We're going to talk about that, but let's welcome Judge Michael Toomin to the show. Thanks for making the time for us, Judge.
Yes, good afternoon. It's great to be here.
Did I represent that right? Tell me, build on that or correct me or tell me what's going on.
No, I think you gave a great summary of it. I was asked in May of 2019, about 18 months ago, to take this case. There was a petition filed actually by a retired appellate court justice, Sheila Bryant. And she had, on her own, decided to file this petition asking to have a special prosecutor appointed because there were things mostly in the news reports, both in the written and in the broadcasts, that stood out and didn't seem like it was normal. And I think she was thinking mostly of the beginning with Smollett being charged with a 16-count indictment, different charges of disorderly conduct for reporting an incident to the police that eventually they didn't feel it happened. So anyway, she had filed a petition. The presiding judge, Leroy Martin, had some misgivings about remaining on the case, and he asked me if I would come in. And I told him that it was up to the chief judge, to Tim Evans. If he approved it, I would come in and do it. I think the reason he had asked me is that I was also a presiding judge in a different division, but over the years, I had, when I was at 26 in California, I had handled about a half a dozen of these requests for special prosecutors. And out of that group, I had denied the first 3 or 4, and then more recently in 2012, I granted a similar request. Actually, it was put forth by the Sun-Times, and the mother of a young man who died in an altercation where he was punched, and when he fell, he hit the curb. It ended up he never woke up, and so he died. And it just happened that he was the nephew of Mayor Daley, and so I took on that job, and I also appointed a special prosecutor in that case. It ended up with plea of guilty of the nephew to involuntary manslaughter. He received a short jail sentence and community service. I didn't handle that part of it. But
if I'm not mistaken, Judge, that was the same special prosecutor, Dan Webb, wasn't it, as this case? It was the same sort of thing. That's
true. Because I've known Dan Webb since he started as a assistant U.S. attorney in about 1970 or 71. So he was known to me, and I was very satisfied with how he handled the case with we called it the Koshman case. And in this case, it was the law had changed, and I could not appoint a private practitioner as special prosecutor immediately. I had to put the question out to all of the state's attorneys in the 102 counties in Illinois, and the Attorney General, and God knows who else. There were 3 or 4 offices that were interested in taking the case, but they didn't have the backup. They didn't, they were very small. And to be a special prosecutor, you've got to have a lot of depth. So I exhausted that, and then I was able to go off and interview individuals. And Dan Webb, as you know, comes from a big firm, Winston & Strawn, and he actually, in this case, agreed to serve as special prosecutor and waive all attorney's fees, which was, when you stop and think, when you have 6, 8 lawyers working on a case, I mean, that firm represented George Ryan.
Right. Lord knows how much that would have come to. So it saved the people money while doing an independent investigation. And the result of that was he found major failures. That's a quote. Abuses of discretion and ethics issues from the office. And he believes that not prosecuting him and not going after Smollett was a failure on behalf of that office. And again, it doesn't matter what you think about Jussie Smollett. At the end of the day, we have to have confidence and faith in our justice system that the right thing is done and that money or access to power and that kind of thing do not influence the way it is called out. And all you merely did was say, let's get an independent prosecutor in here. And the message sent, according to fellow judges and others who have spoken out on your behalf, is that when a judge does his job and asks for oversight of highly irregular activities, that this kind of political retribution happens. Here's what the Mayor Lightfoot, had to say about it.
The optics of this are terrible. It looks like retaliation. This is not something that we should have, not in this time, and I'm deeply concerned about it.
Your reaction to the mayor speaking up, and you've heard from others as well?
Well, when I heard that, and I did hear it, I was very grateful that, she spoke out on it, because it was not something that was her case, and yet it's something that's definitely in the public view and the public interest. And to have public official, a very high one, come out and express her own feelings. She is a lawyer. She's a former prosecutor, and she made the right call. I thought it was great.
Judge, can you stick around just a moment here? I have to pause for a second. I've got a lot more to ask you, and I think you have a little more to share with our listeners too. That you and I spoke briefly before this interview, and you said some things to me that I think deserve repeating. So we'll continue with Judge Michael Toomin, Cook County Judge, in just a moment. It's 1:44. Hey, Illinois. Our guest is Judge Michael Toomin, Cook County Judge, 40 years of distinguished service. He has been rated highly qualified, and or recommended by every bar association and every prior retention. He is seeking retention on the November 3rd ballot. However, Tony Preckwinkle, board president and Democratic Party chair, said he no longer has the backing of the party. After you ordered an independent review of Kim Foxx's office and the handling of the Jussie Smollett case, a lot of other judges and many other people, including Alderman Riley, just on the show, and other aldermen and political figures across the county are coming to say this does look like retribution. They're saying it has to do with some of the things, some of your actions on the bench, but have never raised these issues before. Is that right, Judge?
I would say so, yes. I was very, very surprised that the president of the county board decided to take it on herself to exercise her own prerogatives. I don't believe that this was something that the board would have taken up had it not been her. And, she was able to get what she wanted. I think that the response against that is reverberated throughout the entire county. And I'm very pleased with that response. It was very gratifying that people who are familiar with the law and familiar with how the politics enter into things were able to piece this together very quickly and to write stories that I thought were very favorable to my position, but more importantly were more favorable to the whole concept of judicial independence. And that's what this is about. That judges, most of the time, in fact, and more than most of the time, I would say the way the system is set up, at least in the criminal court and in juvenile court, the judge doesn't volunteer for a case. You have an assignment. The cases come to you off the wheel, the computer. That's the way it's been in many, many divisions. That was a change in the 60s and 70s. So the presiding judge isn't the one that picks out the case for this particular judge that works under he or she. And it's a cleaner situation. So you don't volunteer for it, but you're there. Cases come to you. You're expected to handle them, unless there's some reason why you feel you should recuse yourself. Or, of course, the lawyers do have the opportunity to come in and ask for a substitution of judges. And under most situations, if they make that motion timely within the first 10 days, it's automatic. So that's been the way things have been going for the 50-odd years that I've been practicing law and serving as a judge. Much healthier.
Yeah. Judge, this struck me as something that really, really matters, and that's why I called you and tried to get a hold of you and eventually had a conversation with you, and you were kind enough to offer to come on the show. Because I just feel like if you care about justice, if you care about judges having independence to do what's right and follow the law, and not have to bend to political pressures, then you should care about this. Today, many of your colleagues, I want to know what you make of this. They decided that Cook County judges seeking retention on the November ballot, like you, refused to fork over their usual $40,000 payment to the party's Get Out the Vote effort, and in protest to what is happening to you, feeling that if your independence from politics is being questioned, that there's a clear threat to their own autonomy.
I thought the action of the retention committee, the joint committee, while I did not attend that meeting on Wednesday, I knew that this would be one of the topics. I thought the ultimate outcome, a vote of 42 in favor of not turning over any of our money to the Democratic committee, I would say my feeling was very refreshed that this committee had the wherewithal and had the nerve to come forward and stand up like that and say, look, this is wrong, and we're not going to permit it. We're not going to be part of it. If that's what the support of the Democratic Central Committee entails, well, you go do your support, and we'll do our own. But I think it was a very strong sign and a good sign that here these judges, the great majority of them, believed in what we talk about all the time, and that is the rule of law that we follow and judicial independence.
It's interesting you're talking about independence, which I think is the central issue. I think there are people who are distracting from this by saying that your ruling or your opinion about children being allowed to be on electronic monitoring is the reason for this. However, that happened in 2012, and yet nobody questioned your retention then. It just seemed to happen so coincidentally close to your ruling on the independent prosecutor for Kim Foxx's office. But respond to that, because I'm sure you're seeing that out there. You and I talked about that. There are folks who are making this claim that that's what this is about and nothing to do with the independent prosecutor.
Well, the problem with that, if people are displeased with a decision of a sitting judge, people that practice law and people in the political realm know what the answer should be. That's why we have an appellate court and a Supreme Court. So you take an appeal. If the judge did something that's contrary to law or to existing cases, to precedent, then that's where your remedy is. If the judge did something that bears upon his or her conduct as a judicial officer, you take a complaint to the Judicial Inquiry Board. And if they find that there's probable cause to warrant going further, the case goes to the Illinois Courts Commission that put judges on trial. I sat on that commission for 3 years before I went to the appellate court. And, it's not a pleasant thing to have judges come before you that you may know or have heard of. But, if they're in a position where they did violate the law, that's the remedy. Yeah. So, but the remedy is not to go after a judge and say, well, we didn't like your opinion, so therefore, too bad, we're going to get rid of you.
Right.
We're going to vote you out,
That's exactly it. Judge, I so appreciate the time you're taking. I know that others within the system and the Tribune and the Sun-Times both wrote editorials about you and saying that voters in Cook County should vote to retain you based on your record. And I'm not putting you in the position of asking for, I'm just telling you what's out there. That they should look at his record and not look at any Democratic Party card that tells you how to vote, but seriously consider what happened here. And I hope that happens. I'm out of time, Judge, but I again appreciate I'm sorry what you're going through and appreciate your time, sir. I couldn't state it better. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Judge Michael Toomin there, and what a story, huh? Keep your Remember When's coming. We're going to talk about that coming up in the 2 o'clock hour. It's time for the news on GN.